You know, we look up at space, see the stars, the galaxies, but mostly it's dark, right? This dark matter making up, what, 85% of everything?
That's the standard picture, yes.
Yeah.
The invisible scaffolding holding it all together, generally thought to be, well, inert, silent.
Oh, what if it's not? What if that vast silence isn't empty? What if something's been in there listening, maybe even interacting with us subtly all this time?
That's the provocative idea we're exploring. A radical departure from this standard cosmological model, definitely.
And it kicks off with Dr. Kira Elwood. She's a researcher at EOCU, the European Organization for Cosmic Understanding.
Right, working deep underground in the Swiss Alps at the LOX Core Observatory.
Which is designed specifically to shield out all the cosmic noise so they can listen for these incredibly faint signals. Gravitational tugs, maybe, from WIMPs.
Exactly. Weakly interacting massive particles. That was the goal. Find the dark matter particle.
Hmm.
But back in January, Kira found something unexpected. Very unexpected.
Not the signal they were looking for.
Not at all. Instead of a clear WIMP signature, she started detecting these resonant fluctuations buried deep in the background noise.
Okay, so first thought must be seismic activity, right? You're deep underground.
Precisely. That was the initial logical explanation. Earthquakes, tremors, geological noise.
But it didn't quite fit.
It persisted.
Yeah.
The structure of the fluctuations, that was the key. They weren't random. They started to look disturbingly like, well, like neural activity patterns, brainwaves, essentially.
Wait, like human brainwaves,
Echoing patterns observed on Earth, yes.
you know?
Not identical, but the resonance, the complexity.
Yeah.
It was mimicking biological thought patterns on a planetary scale.
Okay, that's unsettling. So she digs deeper, realizing it's not just the Earth rumbling.
Right. The shape was wrong for seismic noise. It felt organic, almost familiar, as you said. That moment of realization must have been profound, moving from physics to, well, potential cosmic consciousness.
A massive leap, especially when it defies all the known models.
Absolutely. Dismissing the seismic explanation forced her to consider things far outside the box. Completely new forms of interaction, maybe.
Which leads her to her boss, director Antoine Mercier. And his reaction wasn't exactly textbook, was it?
No. You'd expect skepticism, calls for checks, calibrations.
Instead, he pours a scotch, locks the door.
Yeah, that immediately signals something else is going on. That this isn't the first time someone's maybe brushed up against this kind of possibility. It screams secrecy, prior knowledge.
And then he drops it, this old data disk. U.S. Department of Defense crest on it.
Project Black Snow, Alaska, 1983.
A dark matter detection site, just like LUX score, basically, shut down super fast.
Within a year. And the reason given, or whispered at least, the lead physicist claimed she detected an intelligent signal.
And then she just disappeared, vanished.
The parallels are undeniable. Remote facility, intelligent signal claim, missing researcher. And the DoD angle suggests it wasn't just dismissed out of hand back then either. Someone took it very seriously.
Seriously enough to keep that disk for decades. So what was Mercier's take on all this?
His hypothesis, a substrate civilization living within the dark matter web itself.
Whoa, okay. So older than galaxies, invisible to us.
Essentially coexisting, woven into the fabric of reality we can't directly perceive,
Yeah.
and potentially watching us for a very, very long time.
It's just staggering. But it raises the obvious question, right? If they're that old, that advanced, why hide? Why not just say hello?
That's the natural question. But Mercier's answer, it was chilling. He said, they have, just not in the way we expected.
Okay. That implies something very different from first contact scenarios we imagine.
Exactly. It suggests their interaction, their communication operates on a level we're not built to easily recognize.
Yeah.
Not radio waves, not spaceships landing, something else entirely.
So Kira, reeling from all this, puts together this specialized team.
Quantum linguists, neural net experts, cryptographers, the best EOCU had, tasked with making sense of these patterns coming from LUX core.
And the patterns start to evolve.
They do. What initially seemed like structured noise begins to show clearer signs of deliberate communication. It starts simple.
Like basic math.
Prime numbers, pi, Fibonacci sequences, the kind of universal constants you might expect as an opening gambit, a way to establish common ground, mathematically.
A cosmic hello world.
Sort of, but then it shifts gears, dramatically.
Into what?
Much more complex structures, simulated thought graphs, encoded strings that seem to represent behaviors, abstract semantic matrices.
Okay, that's way beyond basic math. That sounds like they're trying to convey actual concepts, ideas, maybe even intentions.
That's certainly how it appeared. And when they fed this complex data through EOCU's quantum AI, Well, the results were stunning and deeply troubling.
What did the AI find?
It started translating segments, and they weren't about abstract cosmic principles. They were about us.
Us. How?
Discussions of Earth's politics, economic fluctuations,
Mm.
climate manipulation strategies, even viral pandemics, their emergence, their spread.
Whoa. Hang on. So they weren't just watching, they were analyzing, taking notes on our biggest problems.
Meticulously. And the implication became unavoidable. Maybe they weren't just analyzing. Maybe the signals suggested influence, intervention.
How so?
Then came one specific time-stamped message, November 2019.
Okay.
The decrypted text read, social equilibrium adjusted, viral vector released, instability index, optimal.
November 2019, just before.
Just before the global outbreak of COVID-19 became widely known, the timing is stark.
Correlation isn't causation, but
Wow.
wow, that's specific and terrifying.
It forces you to reconsider events, doesn't it? And it didn't stop there. Another message, January 2021.
Let me guess, more commentary.
Geopolitical divergence initiated. Polarization experiment yielding results.
Which, again, thinking back to early 2021, rising global tensions, political divides deepening everywhere.
Precisely. It paints this picture of humanity as subjects. Subjects in some vast laboratory experiment run by these hidden entities.
And things started getting weird at LUX core itself too, right? Not just the data.
Yeah, the environment began acting strangely. Researchers reporting the air feeling heavy, dense, lights flickering randomly, computers rebooting without command.
Like their presence, whatever it was starting to physically manifest or interfere.
It's hard to say definitively. Unintended resonance, deliberate low-level interference, psychological pressure. Either way, it added to the growing unease.
And then the message directly to Kira.
On her personal laptop, just text on the screen, "We appreciate your attention."
Okay, that's direct. That's unambiguous.
Absolutely. No more decoding needed. Mercier immediately tightened security, more surveillance, biometric checks. He saw it as a clear escalation. They knew they had been spotted.
And then people went missing.
2 researchers vanished from the facility. No trace.
It's gone.
Gone. But the truly disturbing part, their retinal scans were still active in the security system.
How is that even possible?
That's the terrifying question. It suggests a level of manipulation, maybe biological, maybe informational, that's just beyond our grasp. As if they were still there in some data sense, but physically removed.
Chilling. And for Kira, the communication changed again, didn't it? It became much more personal.
Yes. It moved into her dreams.
What did it?
Lucid dreams, filled with these overwhelming cosmic visions, galaxies collapsing, stars being born and dying, alien cities made of light and shadow.
Wow.
And voices. In the dreams, the voices finally gave themselves a name. The Saroon.
The Saroon. And how do they describe themselves?
Incredibly abstract terms. The silence between thoughts, the shape between atoms. Like they exist at a level beneath our normal perception of reality.
Wow. Okay. And did they say what they wanted? Or why they were doing all this?
They made an astonishing claim. We guided your birth, now we guide your evolution.
Guided our birth. That's immense. Like cosmic parents.
Yeah.
Or architects.
Or owners, perhaps. The implication is profound. And they said their increased activity, the more overt signals and intervention, it was because humanity had reached, in their words, critical entropy.
Critical entropy. What does that mean? Chaos. Dysfunction.
It sounds like it. Like we become too unstable, too close to self-destruction, and require correction.
Correction. That sounds ominous, not like gentle guidance.
It implies a forceful adjustment, doesn't it? Whether we like it or not.
And while this is happening to Kira and at LUX core, strange things are popping up globally, too.
Yes. Seemingly unrelated incidents. Advanced AI systems going haywire, nuclear silos supposedly offline, suddenly shutting down completely, satellites exhibiting weird orbital fluctuations.
Glitches in the system, basically. But too many, too critical.
Exactly. Individually, maybe dismissible, but taken together with what Kira was learning, it started to look like a pattern, like coordinated, subtle manipulations of key global systems.
So how were they doing it? Did the Saroon explain their method in these dreams?
They did, in a way. They spoke of operating within the dark matter itself, since dark matter permeates everything: space, Earth, us.
Our bodies. Our brains.
Even our minds, potentially. They called it quantum cognition, the ability to resonate with our neural pathways at a fundamental quantum level.
So they can nudge our thoughts, influence decisions, emotions.
Subtly. without us necessarily being aware of the external influence, shaping ideologies, amplifying fears, encouraging certain
So
trends.
they don't need an invasion fleet.
Why would they? They can just operate from within the background noise of reality.
Nudging societies.
The examples: religious extremism, social media madness, populist waves, artificial scarcity, panic. Could all those be nudged, part of the experiment?
That's the terrifying implication, that major historical and social currents might not be entirely organic, that we're being subtly steered.
Well, why? What's the point of all this manipulation?
Their stated rationale, according to Kira's Dream Communications, was, we optimize complexity. Chaos births innovation. Innovation is evolution.
Optimize complexity, so they want chaos. They seem to see it as a necessary crucible. That stability leads to stagnation. But disruption, even painful disruption, forces adaptation, creativity, evolution.
So we're basically a cosmic petri dish they occasionally shake up to see what grows.
That's one way to look at it. A deeply unsettling one. Humanity as test subjects in a vast, uncaring experiment.
Which leads us to the Large Hadron Collider, April 2025.
Right. A very specific experiment was scheduled. Officially, it was about supersymmetry research.
But unofficially,
Unofficially, driven by Kira and her knowledge, the goal was to generate a very specific dark matter resonance field.
a signal to deliberately contact the Sarun.
Yes, to actively reach out, a high-risk, high-stakes attempt to communicate directly, maybe even meet them on their own terms. Kira was leading this secret initiative.
And did it work? Did they respond?
They did. Before the experiment even fully initiated, a response came through the residual patterns Kira was monitoring. We welcome your resonance. It is time.
Time for what? Chilling. And then they fire up the LHC.
Yes. And things immediately went haywire. Sensors across the LHC complex went dark. Clocks stopped. Researchers later reported missing time gaps of 8 to 16 minutes in their memory.
Missing time, like abducted,
Yeah.
or just reality glitching.
Unclear, but widespread temporal anomalies. And for Kira, in the control room, something even more profound happened.
What did she experience?
She described the control room dissolving around her, replaced by a vista of stars, and this overwhelming sense of a presence, a vast, complex, fractal consciousness enveloping her.
Direct contact.
The most direct yet. And in that state, they spoke to her, called her the bridge, the first to truly hear us.
The bridge, implying she was the connection point.
It seems so. And because of that connection, they gave her a choice. A choice for all of humanity.
What kind of choice?
2 paths. Path A, ascension. Humanity cooperates, guided by the Sarun towards harmony, post-scarcity, a quantum-engineered future.
Sounds good if you trust the guides. What was path B?
Restructuring, a forced simplification, planetary rewilding, human societies fracturing, technology decaying, back to a more tribal existence.
Wow. So guided utopia or forced collapse. That's quite the ultimatum.
An unbelievable burden to place on one person. They even commented on free will during this exchange.
What did they say about it?
Called it a potential anomaly, maybe an error, maybe a miracle, something uniquely flourishing on Earth compared to the simulations they'd run elsewhere.
So they recognized our capacity for choice, even if they didn't fully understand it.
It seems so. But they followed it with that analogy. Humanity as children with fire, burning things before we understand them.
Implying we couldn't be trusted with our own future.
They claimed they'd been subtly preventing extinction events for 2 centuries. But now things were too critical. A decision had to be made. Full intervention, or let us potentially burn ourselves out.
The pressure must have been immense. How did Kira react?
She physically collapsed, fell to her knees, the weight of it, reducing humanity's entire future to a binary choice.
And she chose.
In a whisper, apparently. Path A, ascension.
Wow. One word decides the fate of the species.
An irrevocable turn.
And after that, did things change? Did the world suddenly become utopian?
Not overnight, but subtle shifts began almost immediately. Things that had been stalled for years suddenly moved forward.
Like what?
A global accord on regulating advanced AI was suddenly hammered out. Quantum energy prototypes tripled their efficiency seemingly out of nowhere. Peace talks between nations that had been enemies for generations made unexpected breakthroughs.
Like someone nudged things in the right direction.
Exactly. An unseen hand, as the source material puts it, gently turning history's wheel. A sense of momentum, of cautious optimism, but no one could quite point to why.
But not everyone felt purely optimistic, right? There were glitches.
Yes. While the big picture seemed brighter, individuals started reporting strange, fleeting anomalies.
The glitch.
That's what some called it. Brief time skips. Shadows moving oddly. Dreams feeling intensely, disturbingly real. technology acting up in minor ways.
And how do people react to that?
Varied. Many dismissed it: mass hysteria, stress, faulty tech. But others saw patterns, signs. Some started talking about prophecy. Fringe cults even emerged, worshipping something they called the star between stars.
So the Saron's influence wasn't entirely seamless. Some people sensed the underlying change.
It seems some nervous systems, some minds, were more sensitive to the adjustments. The subtle rewriting of reality's code, perhaps.
And what about Kira? What happened to her after making this monumental choice?
She vanished from public life, retreated to a remote cabin in the Swiss woods, never went back to LUX core.
Just walked away?
Completely. She set the course, but the sources suggest she was left with deep uncertainty. Was it truly her choice, or was she just playing a predetermined part in the Sauron's plan? Did they just make her feel like she had a choice?
That's a heavy question to live with. And the Sauron, they didn't just pack up and leave after the choice was made.
No. The narrative suggests a persistent Sauron presence remained, a kind of low-frequency consciousness subnetwork embedded within the planet, within our collective neural fields.
Still watching, still gardening.
Exactly. They're described not as conquerors, but as gardeners of entropy, managing complexity, guiding growth through cycles of order and chaos, a constant adaptive presence.
And they still use subtle influence through people.
Yes, the concept of nodes. Certain individuals, artists, scientists, leaders, writers, who are perhaps more receptive to the Sauron's low-level resonance.
So these people might unknowingly channel ideas or push innovations favored by the Sauron.
Subtly seeding concepts, shaping culture, encouraging friction where needed for innovation, guiding collapse towards constructive regrowth. Countless invisible nudges steering the ship.
And this wasn't their first rodeo, apparently.
No, the implication is they've done this elsewhere, other worlds, with mixed results. Earth perhaps has been lucky so far in how things played out.
Which brings us way into the future, 2097.
Right. Kira's great-granddaughter, Naira Elwood, she finds something in that old cabin.
A data cube.
A sealed data cube, encrypted to Kira's DNA line, containing Kira's personal logs, her full story.
And Kira's final message. What was the takeaway?
It was surprisingly philosophical.
Yeah.
She wrote, "They're not gods. They're not devils. They are the universe trying to understand itself, one mind at a time. We are the mirror. Reflect wisely."
Wow. So see them not as aliens, but as part of a cosmic process of self-discovery, and us as participants.
That seems to be her final perspective. A call for thoughtful engagement, not just fear or worship.
And Naira. She takes this message to heart.
In a huge way. She becomes humanity's first official envoy to the Sauron Collective.
After millennia of silence and subtle nudges, we finally start talking back.
Humanity begins to whisper back, as the source puts it. It's presented as the start of a completely new chapter, a tentative dialogue.
So pulling back from this deep dive,
Yeah.
it leaves us with some massive questions.
Absolutely. The true nature of dark matter, obviously. The possibility of hidden intelligence is all around us.
And this idea of gardeners of entropy. If that's a valid perspective, how does it change how we look at our own history? At chaos, at disruption? Are they always purely negative?
It forces a reevaluation, certainly. What if some struggles, some collapses were necessary pruning for future growth, guided or otherwise?
And that final thought from Kira, being a mirror reflecting the universe, what does that even mean for us practically?
It's profoundly challenging. It suggests our consciousness, our perceptions, play a role in the universe's own understanding of itself, that how we perceive, how we react, matters on a cosmic scale. Maybe understanding isn't just about seeing the obvious, but about learning to read the silence, the shapes between the atoms.
A lot to think about. The idea that the biggest influences might be the quietest ones, and perception could be everything.